Static web asset file sizes can be reduced by over 80% thanks to a new feature in .NET 9. We'll talk about how it works and how you can enable the feature. We'll also show you what you need to do if you're upgrading an existing project to .NET 9. In addition, we'll also talk about some of the drawbacks of this new feature and how you can get around them. If you have an ASP.NET Core app that supports static web assets like an MVC project, the files will typically live in the www root folder. To enable this, you just call app.useStaticFiles. In .NET 8, if we wanted to add compression, we could add response compression. This is how we did it. So we can call builder.services add response compression, and we can set some options for it. So we can mark the fact that it's enabled for HTTPS. We can also add some providers for the compression. So we can add Brotli compression provider, and we can also do the same for gzip. We can also configure some options. So we can call builder.services.configure, and we pass in the Brotli compression provider options. And within that, we can set things like the level of compression. So with that, we've got a couple of options. We can go for the fastest, no compression, or the smallest size. We're going to go for the smallest size. We'll also do the same for gzip as well. We just need to change the generic type to gzip compression provider options. And to enable this, all we need to do is to call app.useResponseCompression. Compression works in a HTTP request by setting the accept-encoding header as part of the request. Now we've unticked this. If we send the request to the bootstrap.js file, we're getting the response size of just under 145 kilobytes. If we set the accept-encoding header now to BR, which stands for Brotli, the response size significantly reduces to 23 kilobytes. This is great for users that are on a slower network as it reduces the response size. The downside of this though is that it adds the compression to every single request. That's a lot of overkill for a file that's barely going to change. But with .NET 9, static asset delivery optimization has been added. This is where it adds separate compressed files when the project is compiled. Here's how you set it up. Let's create a .NET 9 project that has static assets like an MVC project. We'll leave the project name as it is. We'll make sure we select the framework as .NET 9 and create the project. If we go into program.cs, this has been enabled automatically by this line here, the map static assets. If you're upgrading to .NET 9, you obviously need to make sure that the target framework is set to .NET 9.0, and in program.cs, you can change the use static files to map static assets. And that is how you enable it. gzip compressed files are added at build time with the addition of Brotli compressed files when the project is published. It also adds content-based e-tags, meaning that the cache is only updated when the content changes. Here's how it works. So this .NET 9 project has a number of static assets. It's got a CSS file, a JavaScript file, and it's also got a couple of libraries like Bootstrap and jQuery. At build time, it will store the compressed files into the OBJ folder. We go into the debug folder, .NET 9.0, and in the compressed, we have all our gzip files. Let's publish the project. We go into Tools, NuGet Package Manager and Package Manager Console. We run .NET space publish, and then the project, which is run the code .NET 9 static, and we're going to output it to that folder. Looking at our published files, if we go into the www root folder, it's added separate files for Brotli and gzip compressions. So it's done it for the ICO, the CSS file down here. Go into the CSS folder, it's done it for the site.css, JS as well, similar story, and lib as well. Once again, it's added our compressed files. Running the application from our published folder, if we do it without including the accept-encoding header as part of the request, the response size comes at 142 kilobytes for the bootstrap.js. If we add gzip compression, it reduces it to 29 kilobytes, and if we change that to Brotli, it reduces it even further at 24 kilobytes. If you're using this in a Blazor application, you'll need to add the assets directive to each of the references for the static files. So to do that, you just call the assets directive and then wrap the file name around the parameter. Do the same for all the other ones as well. There are some drawbacks with the static asset delivery optimization. It only works in the www root folder. So if you store your web assets in another folder, those files won't be compressed. To continue to use that, you still need to use the app.useStaticFiles method and reference the folder name. We're going to change the folder name of the static web assets from www root. I'm going to rename it to My Assets. Now to set this up in a .NET 9 project, we replace map static assets once again with the use static files, and then we call new static file options, and we supply a new file provider, a new instance of the physical file provider, and then we need to store the directory to where our static assets are. So that will be called in directory.get current directory, and then it's inside the My Assets folder. We also need to make sure that the files are copied over when they're published. So we set up a new item group in the CSproj file. For the content, we need to include everything that's in the My Assets folder. And we set the copy to output directory as always. It would be good if we could use static asset delivery optimization in another folder, but fortunately there is a tool where we can do just that. The tool is .NET Compress, and to install it we run .NET space tool space install -- global, and it's called .NET Compress. Now we've already got it installed. In order to run it, we run .NET Compress -d, then we specify the folder. So we're going to use this project. So we copy and paste that. And then we can specify the -p parameter, and we can say which type of files we want to include. So for this, we're going to include the JS files. We can then specify the format. We're going to go for Brotli. We can also specify the number of threads and what sort of level. We're going to go for the smallest size. With all our JavaScript files now, we now have Brotli compressed files added. So that's one way of compressing files from another folder, but there are other drawbacks with this feature. Files have to be known at compile time. So if you have something like a dynamic generated XML sitemap, you won't be able to use it. You also can't choose which files are compressed. This is a problem if you have a lot of static web assets, as the total file size will increase. However, this is a good feature and I'm looking forward to what's to come. And if it makes you want to update your project to .NET 9, then watch this video next. The video shows you how to download the .NET 9 SDK and update your .NET 9 project. And let me know in the YouTube comments what you think about this new feature.